Chapter 68. How to Build a Brand. Summary. Denki finally gets to be like his idol, Mothman. AKA, step 1 of being a pirate is branding. So, what's the plan? Ochako says, hopping up onto the counter. Pyerpa flopped into the nest, burrowing under the blankets while the rest of them stood around the control panels. From the looks of it, Mei says, eyes locked onto the screens. The location they sent us has a relatively large network of underground tunnels, which means it's the perfect opportunity to try out the scanner, baby! The what? Ochako blinks owlishly. Izuku perks up. The biorhythm scanner. There's one built into the ship that's good for detecting carbon-based life forms in wide open spaces, but we also made one that's specifically for tight tunnels where the signals ricochet a lot. Mei nods excitedly. I'm sure our baby will be great! Denki sure hopes so, considering he helped make this one. There's a lot of complexity in decoding the information these things receive, so he had a hand in making sure things were up to Mei's standards. He's not exactly confident that he did everything right, though. The tunnels will mean we'll be fighting in a relatively tight space, one that will probably be dark as well, Izuku says. Dark? What about all those pretty moss and mushrooms? Pyerpa asks, eyes poking up from behind the counter. From what I saw in the forest, they only grow on organic stuff, and given the terrorists are hiding out in rocky caves, I don't think they'll have too much luck lighting out the place. The major caverns probably have some, but the tunnels, not so much. Which might be a problem for us. On Terra, moths have excellent night vision, and with how dark the forests are here, I doubt it's any different. Mina hummed. Don't bugs have bad hearing, though? That would be helpful for sneaking up on them. Right, Izuku smiled. And with how sound travels through caves differently than open air, they should be at an even greater disadvantage. So we agree sneaking in is the best option? Ochako asks. Denki nods along with the others. All of their group was more efficient at close to mid-range combat, so the tight spaces would put things in their favor. Much better circumstances than their last fight. Once we actually fight, though, we'll have to be careful not to cause any cave collapses. Don't make me tell Aizawa-sensei and the others that someone got smushed because we were careless. I'll have to minimize my use of One for All, and Kachan will have to limit his explosion size. I know that, Deku. I'm not an idiot, Katsuki huffed. So, scan the caves to find out where they're hiding, sneak in, and then capture them once we get in close? Ochako summarized. Right, Izuku agreed. Though we should probably think about some branding stuff. Izuku sat down in his co-pilot seat, swiveling around to stay facing everyone. I know we settled on eldritch beings of pure chaos sent from another plane of reality, but what exactly does that mean? Simple, Denki chirped. What you did against the Trellin. You were in full Eldritch God cryptid mode right there. But when in doubt, ask yourself, what would Mothman do? Mothman? Fastel questioned. Do you know one of the people who live here? Mina slung an arm around Denki's shoulder. Mothman is just Denki's favorite cryptid from back home. Basically, a mysterious moth person that some people swear exists, but most agree aren't real. He has a poster of him in his room and everything. Mothman is real, Denki protested, but no one paid him any mind. One thing that could help us be all otherworldly is speaking Japanese when we're down there. It was a lot more confusing and intimidating on the trafficker ship when we didn't understand what people were saying. Ochako mused. Oh! Mina interjected. Not that Denki was listening too hard. He was still totally not sulking. What about growling and intense eye contact like Katsuki did? That seemed to freak the guards out pretty bad. The conversation continued around him, but Denki's mind had already wandered too far. Sero and Todoroki believed him. Why was he stuck with a group of non-believers? There are literal moth aliens here. Maybe one made it to Earth. He huffed. Maybe if they took a second to look into things themselves, instead of believing the first thing they hear, they'd believe him. Wait, guys, Denki interjects. How can we know these guys are telling the truth? We might be about to beat up a bunch of, scientists curing moth cancer, but the government doesn't want that because they get a lot of tax money from the medical treatments. The group goes quiet. Izuku sighs. Denki does have a point. We shouldn't just take their word for it. But what if they are telling the truth? Ochako protests. We can't just not help them 'cause they could be lying. I'm not saying we don't help them. How about, before we subdue them, we listen in to make sure they really are the villains here? Wow, I didn't even think that they may be lying. Nice catch, Danks. Mina praises. Yeah, good point for once, dunce face. Katsuki tisks. And it may not sound like much, but coming from Katsuki, that is one of the highest forms of praise. Denki smiles, bouncing a little in place. They decide to strike as soon as they can, to reduce the chances of the terrorists getting wind of their interference. When they set out, the sun is setting, bathing the planet in darkness. Not that Denki can tell the difference from inside the dark earthen tunnels. Pale coppery rocks surround them on all sides, with only the occasional speck of fluorescent moss. Denki would have really liked a night vision setting on his goggles, but it's not like they have the funds to get everything they want. Maybe if this whole space pirate thing is successful, they can afford better gear? Speaking of which, another thing he would like to have is some sound-dampening shoes. Sure, the echoey caves would mess with the moth's hearing, but it didn't make for easy sneaking. You know, that's it. First the Roombas and now this? After they get these guys, he's asking Mei for help brainstorming a way to make the shoes muffle steps better. That's probably not as expensive as making night vision goggles, right? The group of 5 hero students continue to creep down the shortest path that'll lead them to the largest grouping of life signatures. Turns out the biorhythm scanner worked well enough, coupled with the ship's normal scanners, to give them a rough idea of the tunnel system. The vast majority of sentients seem to be grouped in one room, maybe a meeting of sorts. Denki's not sure what terrorist groups get up to in their free time. Soft shuffling echoes grated in the near silence. Denki was very tempted to ask if they were there yet, but not only was that not very stealthy, it was not very cryptid-like. Mothman would be very disappointed if the reason the other moths continued to hurt people was Denki couldn't keep his mouth shut. He had to be strong, in the name of Mothman. They came to another fork in the road, and Mei's voice crackled to life across the comms. Take a left. The sentients should just be up ahead. The group shares a look. They need to be sneaky about this, just long enough to get the confirmation they need. Then they can capture these guys and bring them to justice. On their flight to the cave system, Denki spotted a few darkened patches of the forest. He hopes that no people got hurt during the firebomb attacks. It's bad enough the forests were damaged. At first, it's so faint, Denki's not sure it's real, but after a little while, the sounds of voices become more distinct. The group comes to a halt when Katsuki raises his arm, freezing in place just round the corner from where a soft orange glow is emanating. Without the echoing footsteps, Denki can finally make out the conversation. Can't believe my own sister would stoop so low as to date one of those wretched fungi. It's not natural. That luminescent bitch is nothing but trouble. Someone says, vitriol lacing every word. We planning to hit their town soon? Another voice asks. Nah, I want that fungi to burn, but knowing my sister, she would just stay with her to the end rather than save herself. Okay, Denki think this is pretty clear-cut. Racist people burning down places because of the mushroom people? Check. Now it's time to take them down. He looks to Katsuki to see what they should do next. They'd worked out their attack strategy beforehand, Katsuki pointing out that they wouldn't be able to talk once they got there. But Denki just wanted to be sure. Crimson eyes gave the group a once-over before their attention was fixed back on the entrance. Katsuki gave a gesture reminiscent of Ida's arm chops, but with only his hand, and they moved. Katsuki blasted in with only a small explosion to boost him, brass knuckles glinting in the sparking light. Black tendrils snaked out from Izuku's wrists, winding across the ground just as they had done back on Oxyus. Seems like he was taking the advice. Denki ran through the entrance after them, sticking to the left wall as he took in the scene. Maybe 30 moth people were gathered in the rather spacious cavern. The pure number advantage gave Denki's heart a little jolt, but he ignored the unpleasant buzz. The aliens in charge told them that the moth species was not geared for combat. They didn't even have a formal military. The only reason this group of people were able to cause so much trouble was the nature of fire in a flammable forest. Denki could do this. This would go better than last time. Last time where Denki could barely help, stuck in the ship doing the little he could manage. Fighting on the ground was something he could do. These rocky caverns were no ground beta, and it may have been a while since he last faced off with anyone other than his space family, but he knew he could do this. He ran forwards towards the closest terrorist, who was frozen in fear. He called electricity to his skin like he'd practiced, letting out the lowest voltage that could dance in arching patterns. He'd start low, and if that didn't work, he'd go higher. Be the human taser, like Izuku said. The small space made his whip impractical, so he simply gave an electrified jab to where the human's solar plexus would be. They stumbled back, stunned but not out of the fight. Denki didn't let up for a second, increasing the voltage a little more and going in for a sweep to the legs. This one seemed to do it, as they crumpled to the ground with a soft thud. Hopefully they were just unconscious. Keeping his eyes on the battle around him, Denki held a hand over their mouth and let out a relieved sigh when he felt warm breath. Okay, if those 2 shocks took this guy down, just a little increase should one-shot the others. With that, he took off around the room, knocking as many moth people to the ground as he could with electrified strikes. He dodged right as Mina skated past him, effortlessly tossing an alien back to the center and away from the exit. He startled slightly as Ochako ricocheted off the ceiling, crashing into someone he hadn't even noticed sneaking up behind him. Okay, he was definitely a bit rusty. Still, they wrapped things up quickly, and in a matter of minutes, all 30 moth people were either lying dazed by Denki's shocks or restrained by Black Whip. That wasn't too bad, Izuku said, hand coming up to wipe his brow. Though I'm not sure it was too on brand. Mina shrugs, pulling a moth person towards the center where the others were gathered. Not every situation lets us show it off. What? Kaminari interjects. Did you guys not see Uravity spider crawl on the ceiling that one time? Totally the vibe. Doesn't matter now, dumbass. Katsuki scoffs. We defeated them. Now the shitty law enforcement, or whatever they have on this planet, can come deal with them. Not so fast, Mei says over the comms. There are still a few others in the caves. I can direct Katsuki, while Pyerpa directs Pinky, and Fastel directs Charge Bolt. Uravity and Deku should stay and keep an eye on the group. Aye aye, Mei, Denki says. He switches his comm to the channel Fastel indicates, and with a point in the right direction, he's off. The darkness encroaches quickly now that he's left the glow of the main cavern. The cave wall is cool under his gloved hand as he trails into the darkness. He moves as quickly as he can, following Fastel's directions. But as he walks, his mind can't help but brainstorm ways to be more spooky. Izuku is practically their standard for an eldritch god, so he's already got the brand down pat, even if he doesn't know it. All Katsuki has to do is be his normal, savage stealth and maybe fly around on his explosions, and he's set. Ochako's ability to say fuck gravity is otherworldly without trying. He's not convinced Mei isn't some sort of minor chaos god. He and Mina really have it hard. They radiate a more dumbass chaos energy than scary chaotic energy. Maybe they can brainstorm how to be on brand after this. For now, though, Denki wants to come up with something. He's going to be sneaking up on people one-on-one in creepy dark caves. If he can't be spooky here, how can he ever? Come on, what would Mothman do? He steps even more cautiously as he catches sight of a moth person crossing between rooms a little ways away. They don't see him before they turn a corner, too focused on the device in their hand. All right, think. His electricity is kind of like Izuku's quirk when it's buzzing on his skin. That's pretty funky, right? Like, most sentients are pretty scared of electricity, so him basically overflowing with it is kind of spooky. Maybe? He scurries through the tunnel the moth person went into, but as soon as he gets within sight, they freeze, little antennae flicking side to side. Shit! He forgot that even if the cave makes a sound weird, it definitely doesn't erase their existence. The dude is going to look at him any moment now, and he's gotta get spooked up. So Denki reaches for his quirk, letting the hallway suddenly come alight with pure power radiating off his skin. The moth person's eyes are wide, almost slightly entranced by the glow, but mostly afraid of this being of lightning that has appeared out of nowhere behind them. They don't get a chance to react before a less sparking Denki is punching them out cold. The electric blonde grins to himself. Thanks for the directions, Fastal. Now, could you help me back to the others so I can drop this guy off?